Welcome. It really is a privilege to be here with you, and to be here at FIU. The format is a conversation for a little bit, and some Q&A, and hopefully we'll get into some interesting subjects. I want to talk about just a few small subjects like China, Latin America, Israel, Ukraine, recruiting in the Army and so forth. But I wanted to start maybe getting a little bit better sense of who you are and what you bring to this job that has had some pretty illustrious predecessors, I must say. And I know that you were from Colorado, that you were commissioned in the Army. You have an MS in Natural Resource Strategy, and I don't know what that is. Natural resources, I know. If they said ecology, I might have a clue. Natural Resource Strategy, I'm not sure. And you've got experience commanding troops, managing DoD politics. You've had basically diplomatic posts within the Army, or posts that really required a lot of diplomacy. I'd like to hear you talk about what are the values that run through all of that incredibly diverse service to the country. But first, I want to talk about, I've seen Top Gun, and I want to talk about how does a pilot who seems to me from the movies to be about the most selfish kind of person, commanding his ship, barking orders. How does somebody like that command troops, manage DoD politics, and manage high-level diplomacy? Who are you?
Wow, I haven't been asked that question before, but thank you, Alberto. Thank you for having me here to FIU. I really, really do appreciate it, and thank you all for being here today, and the partnership with Council on Foreign Relations as well. But I would just say that just my journey through the Army. I've been in the Army for 37 years now, and it goes by really fast. And so just as I've come up and had different positions in my time, and been able to, sometimes I would say most of the time, have to pinch yourself in terms of, I can't believe I'm sitting here being able to be a part of this and watching heads of state or leaders describing challenges, or, just being a fly on the wall, feeling, being in support of somebody else that was in the lead to engage. But just all of the different kinds of things. I would say in the United States Army, and I would say in all of our services writ large, I could have never, if I had the opportunity to sit down and chart out and then be able to do all those things, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And been able to do what I've been able to do in our services as a soldier in the United States Army. I mean, I think when I say that, there might be a list of things that you think of, like, oh, I think that means this, 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 and this. But where else can you go to flight school, fly helicopters in the United States Army, go to combat with America's sons and daughters, and as a coherent team, be able to, I mean, the number one goal is to do your mission, but it's to bring everybody back that you deployed with, period, right? And then where else can you? I've been very honored to be able to serve at the White House as a vice president's military aide. I've served in Capitol Hill as a congressional liaison for the United States Army. Been to combat, been to Iraq, been to Afghanistan. And again, I mean, I couldn't have picked all these things that I've been very honored to do for our country, and now in command of the United States Southern Command. And I think in the previous position in the NORTHCOM, right, that we have 6 geographic combatant commands in the Department of Defense. And so when I say six, it's six, the DoD, Department of Defense splits up the globe into 6 different geographic areas. I have one of the 6. And NORTHCOM is the other one that has our homeland, Canada, and the United States. And I was able to be, as a 3-star general, the land component commander for NORTHCOM. And as everything was starting to happen with COVID in 2020, we saw you could have, I know that you probably remember the day where you were, and you started getting that spidey sense about, okay, something's not right here. Something really bad is fixing to happen. And you remember what took place in our society and our world about just completely stopped. Our command led the effort for Department of Defense medical providers. So our services, all the services, doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists. So for the next 2 years, employing those DoD providers into hospitals to help, and that was across over 50 cities in 70 different hospitals for like a year and a half, and helping the civilian population, the civilian hospitals being able to take care of that.
You're talking about Latin America at this point?
No,
just worldwide.
No, in the United States.
In the United States.
Yeah. So being able to do that, then after that was were vaccine sites, right? That the Department of Defense helped different states. And I don't know if any of you got a COVID vaccine at a all military vaccination site, but we had, I think, 4 in Florida. And then after that, it was the Operation Allies Welcome, 8 installations of 64,000 Afghans that came from Afghanistan, and then being able to accept them into our country, be able to take care of them. And those 8 installations fell under my command. So coming here to Southcom, we were just, we were not finishing up that mission, but we had been working full speed ahead on all 8 cylinders for the last 2 years. And then to come here to United States Southern Command and this command that has the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, and being responsible for that area of operations. Very, very important, and very honored to be able to do that. So just to circle back to your original question, having done a lot of those things and being honored to be able to do that. But we have a lot of challenges now in our own region, security challenges. And just thinking through 2 years ago when I first got into this seat as the commander of Southcom, compared to now, and the things we're talking about, the things that have happened across our globe, how do we get after those challenges, right?
So you've lived a life of service and a life of opportunity that you pretty generously credit the Army with giving you those opportunities. But it also required somebody who was willing to say yes, because you didn't have to stay. You didn't have to take the assignments. What was it that that drove you? This is a really extraordinary lifetime of service to country.
Well, and I think the other piece of that I haven't mentioned is that I was part of a dual military family. So my
husband is also a general.
Also, and he retired a year ago, but 40 years of service. He retired as a 3-star general. But we were, since I was a 2nd lieutenant, got married within my first year of being in the Army. He's also a helicopter pilot. And so we were a dual package. We were a package, right? And so we were always very careful every 2 or 3 years when it's time to move that you don't ask for things. There's so many incredible things you can do in the military, but there are many things that, that can take you and split you up as a family or a couple, because he might not be able to do the same thing if I were to ask for something else. So the military services actually have military family programs where they keep you together, right? Because the investment that's made in you, I could just take being a helicopter pilot or an aviator. There's a lot of money that goes into that, a lot of investment, coaching, teaching, training. And you want to be able to retain that investment. And so, and I would say that that program, I mean, 37 years in, and we're talking like 30 years ago, 35 years ago, these programs existed then and allowed us to be able to be stationed together and keep our family together. Our daughter is, I have a granddaughter now in first grade, but you know, just being able to keep our family and stationed together. And so the ability to say yes was really the ability of the service to retain us, because they made it possible for both of us to succeed.
And going back to my original question, I know you don't share the same view about pilots that I get from watching Top Gun, but so how does a helicopter pilot who is making her decisions and everybody's following, how does that person become the person that leads a mass of troops that all have to believe your vision?
Well, because as the leader of that type of an organization, you're not just responsible for your, you know, your flying skills and flying your aircraft, right? You're responsible for all your pilots, all your crew chiefs, all of your helicopters that they can actually fly because they've got good maintenance and they're ready. And that's a full-time job. So the training of your organization to be able to, if I just take flying helicopters, flying with, our mission was about 75% at night in helicopters where you fly in formation. And you carry infantry, you carry sling loads underneath of very heavy equipment. So being able to manage the weight of the aircraft in the temperatures, being able to be a rotor disc behind the helicopter in front of you, and you've got 5 of you in a row, maybe a minute or two separation between the next 5, and you have about 100 aircraft in the air. And oh, by the way, you have Apaches that are doing the cover. You have Chinook aircraft, the really big ones with the 2 rotor blades, carrying some really heavy equipment. And you're C2, and you're commanding and controlling that operation for maybe 10 to 12 hours is what we did in Iraq. And then if you do that,
And the mindset that you talked about was to bring everybody back.
Right. So how do you rehearse all that? How do you coordinate that? How do you, not just the aircraft, but the fires, the preparatory fires where the aircraft are going to land? How do you synchronize all those aircraft picking up the right groups of troops? How do you synchronize all the equipment to be staged in the order of those aircraft coming in and picking it up? How do you rig the loads and tie all the knots and the, you know, because you have to hook it on to the bottom of the aircraft, right? And then make sure that the load that you're carrying doesn't cause the aircraft to crash, or doesn't, you know, you have an unstable load. There's all kinds of things, multiple things that you have to think about, that you have to train to. So it's not just about the leader, it's about what you've put together to train everybody to be part of that, like the 2,500 people and the equipment, because that's just getting them where they got to go. Then once they get on the ground, they're in combat operations, right? And they need to get there with their equipment, and then they need to be, that's where the whole ground mission starts. So there's an air mission piece to it, and then there's a ground mission. So there's a lot of training, synchronization, very specific precision that goes into things. Timing matters. How you train, the orders that you give have to be very precise, because you're talking about people's lives. And so I could talk for hours. He's getting me all excited about missions and things like that.
And I don't want to interrupt, but we need to raise the conversation.
America.
Oh yeah, Latin America, China, and stuff like that. But last question about your experience. Which one of the craft did you like best as a pilot?
Well, of course, the one I flew.
Which was?
Yeah, the UH-60 Black Hawk.
The Black Hawk.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when I was coming up through,
Is there a film of this that we could look at?
I think there is. There's some pictures. I don't know if I think there's some film out there.
You didn't do any particular,
or anything.
Yeah.
Like that. No, you won't see that on film.
All right. But let's move to Latin America. It is obviously the importance of Miami is being in the middle of North and South. It's not we're not the capital of anything, but we're the meeting place of everybody. And so the region is of vital importance to us in a way that I think is different than, say, the Southwest of the United States. We have a different type of immigration, if you will. We have different kinds of issues. You're looking at all of it. When you think of Latin America, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about the instability, economic and political, that drives people here? Are you looking about the partnerships of big countries with other countries that are not aligning with the United States position? What's your list of priorities to worry about at night?
So I'll start off with the opportunities, because I think I've always been a glass half full kind of person, and then you start from there. And if we could actually put up a chart on the opportunities in this hemisphere, I brought some charts along just to help showcase some of the things that we have. But yeah. And the thing is about the opportunities. It's the opportunity to feed and fuel the world. That's what this region has. And there was a lot of talk about that about 10 years ago, about this region being able to feed and fuel the world. And yeah, you're go a couple more back. You're going in the right direction now. Nope, other way. One more. There you go. Right there, opportunities, potential to feed and fuel the world. So we have, if you look at the top left of that chart, the historical ties that we have with Colombia and with Brazil. I mean, we fought in combat together, Team USA with Brazil in World War II, and Colombia and in the Korean War, and they're very proud of that. Oh my gosh. When I go to Brazil and I go to their services, I go to their Air Force headquarters, I go to their Army headquarters, I see the murals and the paintings, and we have some of them in the Southcom headquarters. And then the organization I talked about in my last job, where we did the COVID response for Northcom, is the Army North 5th Army, which was the ones that was the army that fought alongside Brazil in World War II. So then you have that historical connection and tie. Colombia, the murals that you see from the Korean War, they're very proud of their service. Anyway, I could get to all the other things. Trade, $740 billion worth of trade with the Americas. That includes Mexico and Canada. But our trade has been the same. It's pretty much flatlined, where China was pretty low in about the 2002 timeframe and has been on a very high trajectory. We are still #1 trading partner for the region of all of the Americas, but China has surpassed the US and South America. So now they're the #1 trading partner, and US is #2.
So that's really an important fact. So China is now #1 in South America. US is still #1 in the hemisphere, which includes the Caribbean and Central America.
Canada.
So that's a huge shift in a very short period of time.
It's been a pretty steep trajectory for them over the last 20 years. If I just take the agriculture, greater than 25% of the world's high and medium potential farmland, 50% of the soy for the globe is produced in this region. And then by 2028, 25% of the global agriculture and fisheries will be in the region, in this hemisphere as well. Talk about the rare earth elements, the energy, the minerals. So 60% of the world's lithium is in this region too, in the lithium triangle: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile. You have rare earth minerals, elements, gold, copper, and then oil. So Venezuela with the heavy crude oil, and then the light sweet crude that was discovered off of Guyana's shores, which has made them very recently to become the fastest growing economy in the world with a 25% GDP increase for the next 5 years. They haven't realized that wealth yet in that country, but that's huge.
So let's take a concrete example of Guyana then. What are the Chinese doing there, and what are we doing there?
So I say that in terms of what Team USA is doing, and what the Chinese are doing, and what I see in terms of, I call it what the Chinese are doing are extraction versus investment, but it looks to be investment. And so the Belt and Road Initiative is how Richardson thinks that the Chinese bring their instruments of national power together in a nice tight box called the Belt and Road Initiative. 22 of 31 countries in this region, 22 of 31 countries in this region have signed on to China's Belt and Road Initiative. That's a lot, 22 of 31. And then 4 other countries in the region have projects that are done by China. And not that that's bad, right? But there have been, as we see, and it's not the first place that the Belt and Road Initiative has come to play across the globe. And so we see what's happened in Africa, we see what's happened in Europe, many other places. There are many examples of the extraction versus the investment. Well, looks to be investment.
So what is our investment? Presumably, if their extraction, we're investing. What does our investment look like?
And so for Team USA, so Shlomi talked about it, thank you for that, the Team USA, the Team Democracy. And I tried to, Team USA is in support of Team Democracy because, as we say, and as we see, one attack on democracy, in my opinion, is attack on democracy everywhere. One attack on democracy somewhere is an attack on democracy everywhere. And I would say that in the region, and we see what through the Belt and Road Initiative, the projects that they get their foot in the door through the economic piece. And so Latin America is still struggling economies from the COVID-19 impacts. So we see the residual impacts of COVID-19 in our own country. And we're still feeling those impacts. And Latin America and the Caribbean, who thrives a lot on tourism, oh, by the way, and we weren't doing a whole lot of tourism, any of us, during COVID. And so when your countries rely on that pretty significantly. So 170 million people thrown into poverty, about an 8.5% average GDP decrease. I could take the highest impact country of 18% GDP decrease as a result of COVID. Then you add on to that one of the worst humanitarian crises in Venezuela, 7 million Venezuelans pouring out of that country into an hemisphere already strapped. Their economies are weak. They can't take on the extra load. They can't take on and absorb that impact into the hemisphere already. And so the challenge is just showing, that up there, what we're trying to do is bring investment, bring help, but not just on the military side of the house, right? So I use the acronym DIME, diplomats, informational, military, and E for economics. And then back to the
We bring investment. I'm sorry, Laura, but I'm really trying to understand in the case of it, because I think everybody who's likely to be here has read about this sort of thing, and so but you almost never read about it in concrete fashion. What is the difference? What is the practical difference between the U.S. investment versus a Chinese extraction? If I'm sitting in Guyana, how do I tell? Am I sitting in the Congress? I don't know if it's called the Congress or Parliament, but if I'm sitting in the government of Guyana, how do I know when it's extraction and when it's investment?
Well, I think that's through the discussions with our partners and the trust that we build with the partners, right? And so myself, and responsible for the M part of the instruments of national power, the military. and having those discussions on the investment by the Chinese is very focused on all of the critical infrastructure of the region.
Mhm.
That's where predominantly the predominance of that investment is. And again, I say that they get in through the disguise, I would say disguise, not guise of economics. But you have these leaders that now are democracies trying to deliver for their people. They're having a hard time doing it. You already have the economic impacts from COVID. You have the additional burden of migration. You have the additional burden of climate change. We have a 1,000-mile drought corridor in the region that creates food insecurity. We've had, I'm not sure if anybody's from Chile or has family in Chile, once in a 1,000-year wildfires the entire month of February. The agriculture in Argentina right next door. They've had the worst drought that they've ever had. We have the El Nino impacts across the hemisphere. You either get flooding or you get drought, and you might get both. Panama's got both. You know, there's a drought happening in the Panama City area. It's impacted the Panama Canal. And then we have flooding in another part of Panama, where it's wiped out bridges to their indigenous populations, and same thing in Colombia, same thing in Ecuador. And so we're helping with bridges, to get bridges so the military can get access, put that access back for the indigenous populations, farmers, to be able to get their products from farm to market, all those kinds of things. But back to the critical infrastructure, deep water ports, 5G telecommunications. There's 24 countries that have the Chinese either ZT, Huawei, so on and so forth, 5G communication. 5 countries have the 5G, 24 countries have the PRC, 3G or 4G. And then when it's time for a 5G upgrade, it's almost, it's very discounted if it's not a zero cost upgrade. But we have the frank conversations. A lot of the countries, again, they don't have the money. They've got to upgrade. Their networks are vulnerable. Their government networks, as we see a lot of these ransomware attacks, these hacktivist attacks are focusing on healthcare, financial institutions. It's the stealing of data, global espionage. I mean, we just had the 60 Minutes interview of our FBI director, as well as the Five Eye Intel chiefs about a week and a half ago. If you haven't seen that, I would just tee that one up. 60 Minutes, Five Eyes, and just take a listen to that for 10 minutes. And just talking about the global espionage on a level that has not been seen before, and the stealing of data.
And I'm assuming that while we're watching this go on, we're not sitting idly. The Southcom for years has been, I assume still is, maintains very close relationships with the military throughout the hemisphere, training, communications, and so forth. Are the Chinese doing the same thing?
The Chinese are using, I would say they're using our playbook against us. They're getting better each and every day. They offer the training, the professional military education training, all expense paid to Beijing for a year, 2 and 4-year programs. And so that's hard to turn down, again, when you have countries that they don't have the GDP and they don't have the budget dedicated to defense to be able to do that. And so, but the thing that Southcom has is the ability to convene partnerships. And so our 8 exercises that we do annually in the region bring together anywhere from 20 to 30 partner nations. We have maritime exercises, air exercises, defense of the Panama Canal exercises, and all of the countries participate. It helps with interoperability. There's a lot of US equipment in the region, being able to communicate and work together to be able to not meet for the first time when something happens. And so conferences where we bring folks together, and so far the Chinese have not done that, had exercises in the region. Now they are doing exercises in the Indo-PACOM theater. They are doing that. And they're teaming up with Russia.
And are they taking military to China for training and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up during the Cold War, and it's stunning to me when I hear somebody like you talking about China, China, China. I served on Secretary Clinton's advisory committee while she was Secretary of State, and even back then it was China, China, China. Where is Russia? Russia here in Miami with Cuba was the reason Castro was able to stay in power. Where is Russia in the hemisphere?
They're in the hemisphere, and the 9 of our countries have Russian equipment, and I say 9 of the countries in the region. The top 3 that you would expect: Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, but then you also have 6 other countries that have Russian equipment. They might have, maybe 20 or so Russian helicopters. Maybe they have some launchers, those kinds of things. The sanctions are working, and that equipment is not fully mission capable. And so, but again, they're prevalent. But I would say where they really have the corner market is undermining their ability to undermine democracy through the information domain. And again, another instrument of national power. And so with over 31 million followers that on social media, that either Russia Today, Espanol, Sputnik Mundo, undermining democracies, really trying hard to replace the United States as the partner of choice in this region. The disinformation, so the purposeful lies that go out from these platforms, they're non-traditional news sources. They don't practice verification journalism. You have journalists that masquerade as professional journalists, and they're not. So we work very closely with our interagency to expose this, find it, investigate it, expose it, and make sure that our partners are tracking that. If you're here to do good things and invest in the region and not conduct malign activity, okay, I'm all for that. But if you're here to do extract, undermine democracies, undermine the leaders, disinformation prior to elections and leading up to elections, and the spikes with that, putting out what are lies or misinformation as well, then we try to counter that. We try to find it and then do something about it. And actually we have, if we can put up the chart that shows all the different folks that we work with. You don't have to see everybody. I know the writing will be small. It's up towards the front of the presentation. But we partner obviously with FIU. It's the whole reason I'm here, right? And then but I have other academic institutions on there as well. We partner with NGOs. I would say on the IUUF, right? Illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing. On any given day in my hemisphere, China isn't the only one. The PRC, the People's Republic of China, isn't the only one that does the IUUF, but they're predominantly the main offender. And if you go one more slide into the presentation, it's the picture right there in the middle of a picture of one of the vessels of the deep water fishing fleet. And if you can see it, it's a picture at night. These are huge vessels. New York Times did a really nice spread on IUUF in the region. And on any given day, I have anywhere from 250 to 642 was the high. Deep water fishing vessels from the PRC in my hemisphere, and they follow the fishing migration patterns and they raid the fish. They continue to raid the fish, which causes a loss of revenue from the coastal countries. And then you got to worry about, okay, well, we have other malign activity like transnational criminal organizations that are trafficking drugs and humans and illegal mining, illegal logging, deforestation. And so what are these fishermen going to do? They got to live. They got to provide for their families. So what are they doing? Are they hauling gas for transnational criminal organizations to do their malign activity?
Are we providing an alternative?
Right. So the exposing that, so you might have a vessel that's a Chinese vessel that's flagged under another nation. So if you have the evidence and you provide that to the partner nation, you partner with Global Fishing Watch, for example, it's just one of many, to expose that malign activity, and then partners take action. They take action against the malign activity. And I think that we've seen over this past year and a half, raising that problem set. The United States Coast Guard, who we work very closely with as well, has made that a priority mission for their Coast Guard, able to expose that malign activity. And now folks are much more aware of what's happening and watching who gets flagged, what ships get flagged, and watching that problem set.
One of the things that concerns me, and I as a former newspaperman and also over the last 18 years as president of Knight Foundation, is the hollowing out of newsrooms, not just in the United States, but pretty much around the world. In the United States, the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, used to regularly train correspondents on various aspects of foreign, how to be a foreign correspondent, specific country knowledges, or with the exception of a small program that we happen to support that Irina Fascianos from the council puts together. It is a very, very small group of people, very small group of people in the United States as a whole, who very few newspapers and forget television stations will not have anybody who covers anything foreign. So you have a story like the one you just told. It's interesting in and of itself, but it doesn't connect in a regular way. That scares me. I assume it would scare anybody who is interested. You can find out the facts, but if you don't have the ways of getting the information out to citizens, then they're not able to do very much with it.
Right.
And then when you add to that the kind of disinformation and misinformation, but particularly disinformation that you track, I think that's a genuine threat to democracy as a system where the people have to be informed in order to perform their job effectively. So you have a big challenge. I'm retiring, but I'm still watching. I don't want to. We need to get to the Q&A, but I want to give you a chance because I know recruitment of staff and personnel means a lot to you. I remember having the privilege of meeting a lot of enlisted men and women in a military trip. I was lucky enough, thanks to Charlie Wilhelm years ago, to do, and I was amazed. I thought I was reasonably well informed. I was amazed at how, frankly, poorly paid people were, yet how motivated, how committed to the job. This was, it's not a it's a volunteer army in the sense that nobody's drafted, but we don't pay people for the job they do. Teachers would say the same thing, but somehow military, and I think most people would understand that, most people are aware of that. I'm not sure people are aware of the economic level that we have in our enlisted ranks, and also the kind of recruiting you do for higher positions that really require competition with an economy that is trying to steal them all away. So you have 2 minutes to do your spiel, and then we go to Q&A. I really think this is so important. We've got to get this right.
I think so too. And again, I go back to, where else can you get up every day and make an impact, a positive impact to national security? Again, I just take my own career, but I'm just one of hundreds of thousands that have had a phenomenal career in the military. And so, again, you can't, I mean, pick what profession, right? Just pick, we have it all. And you get to do some pretty cool stuff. And everything that you do here at FIU, I mean, translates. I mean, I could put up my technology slide. real fast of the technology that we're testing. So we don't get a lot of assigned forces and allocated forces in Southcom, like a lot of big aircraft carriers and ships and all kinds of stuff, right? But what we do, I advertise this region as a laboratory test bed for all the services, for the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coasties, Spacecom. Bring your things here to the AOR. I've got real world missions happening, our exercises, layering in multi-domain, multi-dimensional. You talk about Top Gun, you think that stuff's cool. You should see the cyber and all the other things that we get to do, right? In space. But the day I have to prepare for as a commander is that chart right there in the middle of all those things that are happening technology-wise. That is my Super Bowl day right there. And that's what I have to train for. That's what I have to train my organization to do. Your 6 geographic combatant commands in the Department of Defense, there's 3 of them really busy right now. We're all really busy. Trust me, I'm really busy. But the thing is that they're dealing with a lot of things that are happening now. Indo-PACOM and that strategic competition, very aggressive strategic competition happening in the Indo-Pacific theater. You have our European command in Europe with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. You have the Israel-Hamas war with our Central Command. So my 3 counterparts are extremely busy. Our Northcom commander responsible for the homeland, I know he's very busy. I came from that command. Southcom and all the things that are happening here. I mean, we rely on the support that you provide. We rely on our, the military used to lead technology several decades ago, and now our private sector does, and our industry does. So partnering is very, very important. All those things that you see are pictures from our hemisphere that we're already doing. And so we go out to the conferences of the services, have to see the latest technology, bring it into the region, but low cost, high return on investment. And I would say that's what Southcom really does really, really well, is we don't cry in our Cheerios about not having everything that we want. Nobody ever gets everything they want anyway. But we go out there and try to find those low cost, high return on investment solutions that
Do you recruit people?
Bring us, and
Do you recruit
share
specifically for Southcom, or do you recruit for the Army generally?
Well, I recruit for the Department of Defense. I'm a joint command. I have every service in the headquarters. So, I mean, I wear the Army uniform, but I represent a joint command and the joint force. And that's how we work together. That's how we fight in the Department of Defense. We fight as a joint force. We don't fight separately.
You told me earlier that you were wearing a tie. As a way
I
you
know.
said,
We have a tie now that we wear.
So
I'm not going to say what I told you, though, are you?
So we ought to talk about the fact that this is an opportunity for women like almost has never been seen in terms of the ability to rise in command.
I would say that I'm not the trailblazer as a combatant commander. I'm not the first one. I'm the second one that I'm the first one that's been in the Army that's been a combatant commander. I'm the third one, actually, the third female combatant commander. And I think that we need to get beyond the firsts, right? To where it's just,
Normal.
it's just normal,
yeah.
Right? Again, the opportunities in the military. I would say I'd like to put a plug in for Southcom and the soft power. There's 2 levers that I have in Southcom. It's hard power, which you would expect, and what you pay me to do, right? In terms of being ready for the worst day ever. But the other thing is that we have a lot of really soft power tools that really move the needle with our partnerships. And this is just a couple of them. This is our Women, Peace, and Security program that we have to encourage the integration of women into the militaries and public security forces. Diversity is very, very important. And then, oh, by the way, my command sergeant major leads the senior enlisted leader program. What makes our US military very special is our enlisted force. So we have hundreds of thousands of people in our US military, but they're not all officers, right? You have a hierarchy, but you have a whole demographic, right? That supports and has very important jobs to our US military that we would not be able to do. That's what makes our US military so special. And our hemisphere has very, I mean, this is a rock star program. The enlisted are off the charts, excited about this. These are some of the groups that we have convened, both on the women, peace, and security, on the senior enlisted leader development, but empowering every demographic so they can be the most powerful militaries to handle their security challenges as well. Because that's what we want. We want them to be able to handle their crises and their security challenges themselves. And so that's what we work toward. And the professionalization of their force, all based in human rights and the rule of law. All based in human rights and the rule of law. We have prided ourselves in Southcom for having our human rights office. It's not just an office, it's an initiative. And that is a core value, human rights. We celebrated the 25th anniversary of this program. We have 2/3 of the countries that have signed on to this program. And so as we see the challenges that have occurred, I could name off, for example, what happened in Peru last December, January. You had a change of administration. You had a president that moved to dissolve the Congress. You had a president that wanted the military to support him. But what did they do? The military didn't support an individual, they supported their constitution. And that country went through a peaceful, for the most part, transition of power. We were on our 11th Minister of Defense with that administration after a year and a half in the seat. And since that happened, we are on the same Minister of Defense for the first, I mean, we're in November now, almost 11 months. And so do you think I was talking to the Chief of Defense the whole time as they were going through that? Right? Talking about what all the things that we have done as part of the human rights training, as we talk about those gray area vignettes. This is what it really means about the human rights and honoring your constitution, not a person, you know. Brother, you can make the right decision. You can do that. That's just one example. You see Guatemala going through some challenges right now too, right? You have a president that was elected, but the party was disqualified from the government. And now there's concerns about what's happening. And so those conversations with the Chief of Defense and our partners, right? This is where those relationships matter. And you either have the relationship or you don't.
It would be,
trust.
yeah, it would be remiss of me not to point out that in Guatemala, some of the worst exercise of power against the free press has happened, including the jailing of editors who have a long history of service to democracy, who were summarily thrown in jail, and in the one case I'm thinking of in particular still is there. So next time you're talking with them, tell them that you're here, that they haven't fully solved the problem. And if they want the details, tell them to call me. We really should include the audience. I apologize, we've been going too far. Beatriz. Well, hold for the mic, please. Why don't
Thank you so much.
Identify yourself? I know
My
who you
name
are.
is Beatriz Rangel, and I am a consultant, the head of AMBLA Consulting firm that does advising in business development to medium-sized and small enterprises. My question has to deal with the 800-pound gorilla we had sitting in our lobby, which is transnational organized crime. We have already 4 certified narco states in the region, which are Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, and Bolivia. And 3 more warming their arms in the bullpen, which are Nicaragua and Honduras and Paraguay. Is it something that keeps you awake in the evenings, or is it something that you know is being handled with an integrated and holistic policy by the whole of the US government? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So while I talk about the PRC and what's happening in the critical infrastructure, because that has a lot of ramifications, so close to our homeland, proximity matters. That's at the top of my list. National Defense Strategy for Department of Defense. The #1 pacing challenge is the People's Republic of China. So I'm aligned with my boss and the President of the United States, which is why those two are who I work for. But at the top of our partners list, every day that they're combating and trying to counter our transnational criminal organizations. And these organizations have gotten more powerful. Their portfolio has diversified. So I mentioned before, not just trafficking of drugs, but also humans. That's become very profitable. As we see in our irregular migration numbers, illegal mining, illegal logging. Let's put that chart back up of the challenges. On the top row, right across, you have the poisoning of the waters due to illegal mining, the deforestation of the Amazon. The Amazon is a huge plus. 31% of the world's fresh water comes out of this region. The Amazon is the lungs of the world. Big swaths of land of the Amazon are being cleared and damaged. That's some of the illegal mining, what it does to the water. It looks toxic. It is toxic. The erosion, projects that aren't done correctly, all lead to other challenges, more challenges for the region. But over 300 billion annual revenue for transnational criminal organizations. And so what I'm trying to do is get our partners, as we have these conferences, each one of them is fighting and trying to counter all of those challenges in their countries. But some of these networks are connected. So how can they better work together to counter all of these challenges and get after the problem set? Not just each of them fight it individually inside of their country, but how do they partner together? And then how does our US government interagency follow the money? Because obviously the money is being cleaned, right, through money laundering. And so you can't interdict and just do the little small things to counter it. You got to go after the money. You got to go after the big stuff. And drug labs and things like that. You got to go after the labs, not the little semi-submersible that has a couple thousand pounds of it. Yeah, we got to do that too. But how do you get after where the manufacturing of it? Where do you get after the money that actually is funding it and the resources?
Does well, the Army wouldn't have any role, I guess, in the demand side of that, because all of that manufacturing of drugs wouldn't be a business if there were not a willing market.
I have an interagency inside of the headquarters, so I'll go back to the one chart that shows all the icons. So there's interagency that's listed. Where's the interagency? Down there at the bottom, right? And those are just some of the whole of government, Team USA, interagency. I have a rep from all those folks in my headquarters. In fact, I just met with them today. And then bringing the apparatus of each one of those agencies together. We have the diaspora here in Miami. We work very closely with all of these folks. All of the things that we discover, the networks we put together based on the ability to be able to do that through patterns of life and different sorts of things of information that's readily available from open source. And then working with the FBI and our teammates, for example, on turning that over and let them do the law enforcement finish. I'm not a law enforcement agency, right? But I do have the one organization. I have the JIATF South, the Joint Interagency Task Force South, and they have the detection and monitoring mission. of illicit drug trafficking coming to the United States. And so that's their role. They find it, they have the intelligence, we turn that over to law enforcement, and or we turn it over to our partner nations. If we can point where it is, we can see it. They can't always see it, our partners, right? But if we tell them where it is, they go after it. Over 76% of our disruptions or interdictions are done by our partner nations. It's really good. And that's increased every year, but that's through partnership.
Yeah. Consul General Nakai, and I'd really like to get some of the students involved in the questions. So if we could do the Consul General now, and then we'll go over there next. The mic is over here.
Thank you very much, Albert-san. Thank you very much, General. China's aggressive expansion of influence is an issue of common serious concern between US and Japan. So I highly appreciate your informative overview of the situation and insightful way how to counter it with the partnership. My question is, the quality or performance of Chinese Belt and Road project in this region, the business level performance and the quality. As you mentioned, serious competition is going on in Indo-China, and China is aggressively promoting Belt and Road project in Indo-China. And US and Japan are competing it with the free and open Indo-Chinese strategies, showing the alternative source of infrastructure. A good news is that we have found that not a few Chinese projects are in good shape. They are in serious difficulty because sometimes they are too ambitious. Sometimes they do not have enough feasibility studies. Signature projects such as high-speed rail in Indonesia are now being almost suspended. This is a good news for us, helping us very much to counter Chinese initiative. Therefore, I would like to know the situation of Chinese projects in these regions. Are they going well, or do you notice some of the projects are facing the difficulty, just like their project in Asia? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Consular General, and very good to see you. And so so some of the projects, as we know, are not done very well. So either you have design flaws, cost overruns, the schedule is totally blown out of the water. President Petro was just in Colombia last week, but the main reason that he went, he did sign 12 agreements with the Chinese. But he's very upset with the Chinese because the Bogota Metro is being built by the Chinese. They're not, as I mentioned, there are 4 countries that are not signatories on the Belt and Road Initiative, but the PRC is building their metro project. And this has been an over 10-year type of deal.
Is Colombia a signature?
Started, no, Colombia is not. But it started when he was the Bogota mayor, right? So he has a vested interest and he's not happy about it. And so that was part of his reason to go, because he would like to see that finished. Again, delivering something for the people, right? When they're having a hard time delivering. And so, so what we do is I'm always on the lookout for who wants to join Team Democracy. You want to join? You're welcome to join, right? Nobody gets excluded from the team. You just have to have democracy as your #1 priority. And so when you say Team Democracy, we have a term called integrated deterrence that the Secretary of Defense, Austin, uses. But if I ask you, what does integrated deterrence mean in our national defense strategy? You're giving me that look like, right? I could get a different answer from each one of you, right? And so
This is a university, probably 2 different answers from everybody.
But so I just coined the phrase Team Democracy, and it's like, oh, Team Democracy, I'll be on Team Democracy, and I'm ready to go. What I do is try to use all the levers, the interagency. What I've found is that we have a convening ability in Southcom. That if we put something together like a conference, an exercise, we host something at the Southcom headquarters, people come and they like to come to Miami, right? But they come. And so, so how do we do that? How do we take advantage of that, that convening power to reach out? So I was telling Brian actually that I was in DC last week. So partnering is part of Team Democracy. Everybody out there, we already use the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So some of these projects, like I could take the Coca-Cola Dam in Ecuador that the Chinese had done and had several erosion issues with it, hazardous material, all kinds of things. And we were able to do a Corps of Engineer project to help fix what the Chinese really messed up for Ecuador. And so that's what outcompete looks like, right? And so I'm all about getting points on the scoreboard, but I realize 2 years into this job, I've realized over this past year, we can't get points on the scoreboard for Team USA with just the M piece of the instruments of national power. And the fact that the Chinese, a communist government, oh, by the way, that can direct state-owned enterprises, which all of these companies are, to do things, and they better do them or else kind of thing. We don't do that in the United States, right? But we have so much, so many US companies already in all of these countries. So I went to this AmCham conference in DC at the American Chamber of Commerce, never been there before, and then opened up the conference with a fireside chat with Secretary Raimondo. And I was able to travel with her because I said, we need to get more investment. I went to see her in the June timeframe and said, we need to get more investment in Latin America and the Caribbean. And she agreed. And she went on her first trip south of Mexico to Panama, and we traveled together the end of July. And it was the day after President Biden announced the 2 of 7 countries in the hemisphere, Panama and Costa Rica, would partner with the United States on semiconductor supply chain. So this is just an example. And as we were going through on a tour of the Panama Canal, during that visit to Panama, she coined the phrase, economic security is national security. And now she's going to be going to Brazil in December, and then we're going to travel again into the region in the March-ish timeframe. But how do we raise that profile, right? Because you see all the challenges. We know the economies are hurting. I bring the M piece, right? So I do the soft power, I do the security cooperation, I help with equipment and hardware, I help with women, peace and security, senior enlisted leader development. We've got a new initiative for the entire hemisphere called Theater Maintenance Partnership Initiative, from the tactical level to the operational level, on how do you maintain your equipment, your US equipment that you purchase and we help you purchase through that security cooperation. But then how do you maintain that? We also have the National Guard State Partnership Program. So a National Guard state, so the state of Florida is partnered with a number of our Caribbean countries. The state of South Carolina
Crises,
partnered with Colombia.
during crises, you mean?
During crises on a daily basis. So I run an adjutant general conference twice a year, and they are rolled up into my strategy and campaign plan. And that's a whole reach back of capability from a state National Guard unit, right? So if you think about Ukraine, who was the state partnership program state with Ukraine?
It begins with an F.
Nope.
Which?
Begins with a C, California. They had an over 20-year relationship. They knew all the leaders in the country. Part of Team Democracy. So I'm always looking on the lookout for who wants to join Team Democracy, who wants to be part of an integrated strategy where we work together with our activities, investments, our operations for the better of Team Democracy.
We're getting warnings, and we're going to get the hook pretty soon. Let's go back here.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for being here. My name is Kaya Hunter, and I'm a senior here at FIU, double majoring in international relations and political science, and was actually part of the Intelligence Fellowship last academic school year. But my question is really focused on technology. I'm currently doing a virtual internship with Central Command, actually, and that's something that we're focusing a lot on in Iraq, which is my country of focus, but focusing on technology and the role that it plays in the country. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more about how we are utilizing technology to promote stability, security, and democracy in Latin and South America. Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of the equipping and some of those things that, again, our region is, our region, I like to say a little goes a long way, right? We don't need big aircraft carriers from Southcom. I don't need a lot of troops on the ground doing things. It's really the partnerships that we bring together our military capabilities and things like that. But in terms of technology, and those of you familiar with the region, but the cyber attacks, the ransomware attacks, the hacktivist attacks, they've been really prevalent across the region. And so, you know, I just go back to, as we have those frank discussions with our partners about, okay, you have a 3G or 4G PRC backbone that's running your part of your government networks. If it goes into the defense network, then the information sharing, the partnering of information that we can share, that goes away. And we have to be very frank about that, because there are backdoors through the technologies. You know, our countries are, I say our countries because we're such good partners, but the thing is the countries in our hemisphere are very proud of their sovereignty. The thing is that you have some silent enemies in cyber, for example, in space. There's no alarm bell that goes off when there's a cyber intrusion or a hack. You don't get that until your information is up for ransom and you're told to pay this amount, right? Or, right, that's how you find out after the bad thing already happens. So the technology, how do we, with these economies, bring a hardening of networks, helping our partners make good choices on the selection of the telecommunications, for example. We don't have a Team USA solution for 5G that we can offer. So I advertise a Western solution, right? Nokia, Samsung, Ericsson, trusted vendors from partners that we trust. And so I go back to the money problem, you know, them having the ability to spend that money. But that's a problem set that, right, the technology, sovereignty. I'm showing a high altitude balloon in the bottom right, right? We saw the outcry from the balloons the balloon that was traveling over the United States, but then there was also one traveling over Central America and South America, right? That was seen. And you can see that's a sovereignty, that's a violation of sovereignty. You can't see that in cyber. You can't necessarily see that in space. Now, I didn't cover space. Out of all the 6 geographic combatant commands, there's the most space, PRC space enabling infrastructure in the hemisphere, in this hemisphere. Why is that? Why is it deep water ports? Why is it 5G? Why is it safe city, smart city technology, which is really population surveillance technology, facial recognition, license plate recognition? Why is there the most space? The sites, the telemetry and tracking, and the space object surveillance, one to track their own satellites, and then to track United States allies and partner satellites, right?
Is that
going to be used
is that
targeting and tracking?
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously it could be. So is there more space? Is that because of the vast regions in the hemisphere that are jungle, for example, that are mountainous, and you don't have interference, other radio interference, and you don't have light interference? Why is it? Answer your question. You're not going to answer, are you? So if you want to know the secret, sign up and work for this is a recruitment. This is a hook.
I know we have a lot of FIU interns at Southcom.
We should get
Thank you for being a part of that, because we have a lot of the FIU interns that turn into government service employees, right?
terrific.
If you don't want to be in the military and you don't want to wear a uniform, you can also be a government civilian. I mean, half my headquarters is half civilian, government civilian, and half military. So you don't have to wear the uniform if, you're not sure.
There's a sign-up sheet at the end of.
No.
Is there any, there were a couple of hands before, just one more question, maybe.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for your service. My name is Martina Hunt-Mejean, and I'm the former CFO of MasterCard and a member of the CFR. So I worked in many, many, many countries over my 12 years being the CFO. And it's fascinating what you're saying. But to come back to the economic issue, so my question will be, given that China is very well funded in the Belt and Road Initiative, then you have the Asian Infrastructure Bank. We have the tiny little DFC and maybe the World Bank also trying to figure out what to do.
Reaching out, the Developmental Finance Corporation gets the
right. So we have a few institutions, but when you look at some of the numbers, they're quite not as well funded as what the Chinese are doing. So if you have the chance to go to Congress, and you have a lot of things in your toolbox, I understand that, and it's amazing how you're using it. But if you were to go to Congress, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that would be on your top wish list?
So I go to Congress routinely, and so having the Army's congressional liaison responsibilities for 3 years, and develop those relationships, and those are very important. So if so I educate, coach, teach, and mentor about the importance of keeping Congress informed, because what is their role? They represent the people, right? They take that very seriously. They raise and support an Army and a Navy, those constitutional responsibilities, and they take those very seriously. So we have an Armed Services Committee on the Senate side and also the House side. We have appropriations committees on both of those sides too. And so I'm routinely up there talking with members, briefing members. The top of my list is always my security cooperation funding, right? It's the ability to go out and help our partners counter these challenges that they have. And so we have a joint cyber assessment team that, for example, it's kind of like our quick reaction force, right? So if a country has a severe hack or ransomware attack, for example, I can launch out like 10 people that can go help them and train with them and help them recover from that as best you can. It's kind of like a Band-Aid, or, you know, clean up the wound and put a patch on it, but it's something that's helpful. It's just not a long-term solution. So it's funding to get after those long-term solutions. I mentioned before, 31 countries. That's not a small area if you look at it. And so how do you get all the way to the Southern Cone? I would say that because my funding has ebbed and flowed in Southcom, and Alberto mentioned some of the previous commanders, but not getting the entire requirement, right? Getting less than 50% of your requirement over 10 to 20 years, that starts to impact, right? It impacts your ability to do conferences and exercises all the way in the Southern Cone. So I can fly to 80% of the AOR, the region, in about 3 to 4 hours. But then to get down to Paraguay, Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, that's like a 10-hour flight. And so, you know, how do I get capabilities down there? So we've been able to increase our funding because of keeping Congress informed, because of bringing partners and being on the lookout for team democracy. We've gotten the most funding in Southcom that we've ever received last year from our department, and then also from Congress. Congress always pluses up all the combatant commands a little bit more, but we got more from both. So it tells me, I think our plans are nested. We're getting after what we've been asked to do. So the security cooperation is always at the top of the list. Also the ability to see, I call it domain awareness, right? Because the region's so big, the waters, the land, our partners struggle with domain awareness. They're always asking for the help with having radars on their coastal areas, being able to see and locate the malign activity. And so I call it ISR. So that's why we test things, right? So the drones, the maritime unmanned sensors, the high altitude sensors, those are big, expensive airplanes with people on board, you know, doing all kinds of checking. I mean, those are simple, low cost platforms. That's why I do the technology and I advertise that. So maybe we get to keep it and continue to test it, right? For vendors in our United States that are working on cutting edge solutions.
Sadly, your term will end fairly soon. And I say sadly because the terms always strike me as too short from a Miami perspective. When you begin to know something about the commander, he or she is off someplace else. Before I ask you then what you want us to remember about Southcom when you leave, I want to thank FIU. I want to thank the Council on Foreign Relations. I want to recognize the chairman of the board of Knight Foundation, Frank Borges, who's sitting in the crowd. He's my boss. I have several of them, but he's the principal one. So I have to make sure this is like but never mind. You don't have a boss. To finish up, just I would love to ask you about the military in Cuba. I would love to ask about the impact of the current wars in Iraq and in Ukraine, in the Middle East. I would love to ask about economic development as it affects immigration. And I have 10 or 11 pages we're not going to get to. But at the end of the day, what do you want us to think when you leave Southcom? How do you want us to think about Southcom as a part of this community?
So Southcom, the reputation precedes Southcom. And so prior to coming here, I found out about Southcom and that I was going to be nominated for the position several months before I actually got into command. And then just everything, and studying and preparation, because you do have to do a hearing on Capitol Hill and you get asked a bunch of questions and things like that. So you have to know things about the hemisphere, but just being able to keep up that awesome reputation that I heard all about as a new person several months out from taking command, and the leaders that we have had that have worked so hard and continue to give. And I see several of them routinely, right, as they continue to contribute to national security and our nation in service. And so being able to keep that up, because just coming from my last position, I never would have thought ever that you would have, my area of operations, so to speak, for a military operation would be our United States.
Mm-hmm.
Never. We go everywhere else normally in the military. And who would have ever predicted a pandemic that occurred with COVID and what we all went through during that period of time? And so I'm normally, going to, all the garden spots, Afghanistan and Iraq, and you generally don't go under good terms. And so you're there because, there's a mission at hand to do. But then being able to serve our entire country that way, and then replicate that, in this job with Southcom. And so one is to keep up the wonderful reputation that this command has. You all were very instrumental. You all sealed the deal in terms of getting Southcom to Miami 25 years ago, right? We came from Panama. The headquarters used to be in Panama. And so when we came here, we moved into the Miami Herald building, right? And when they got a different building. So we moved into their old building where our headquarters was being built. And then we moved into the headquarters that we're in now in Doral. And so we're very proud of the fact that we are able to be here as part of the community, a community that wants us, that loves us, that we love, that we contribute to the community. You are part of us. FIU is a part of us. We have our diaspora for the region. The Consular General Corps is so very important to us. And it's all about relationships at the end of the day. And you don't know who is going to be, you can't guess who out of all the relationships you're going to have to call on or going to need help from at some point in time. That's why I say, if you want to be on Team Democracy, we're all on the same team, if that's the number one. And so it's to keep up that relationship, keep up with all the challenges, but stay ahead of it. How do you operationalize and stay ahead of all those security challenges? How do we predict the next pandemic? What's next?
I can't end on a pandemic note.
That's
It just
good.
doesn't feel right. So tell me what students do you want? What do you want students to think about
How do
as they think about careers?
How do we help this region, right? Do our part as Team Democracy from Team USA, because we're a leader. We're a leader in the globe, and people look to us. And where we're not leading, others will not follow if we're not there leading. So they look to us for leadership. But how do we help? And we go back to that first slide, the opportunity. How do we help this region realize that opportunity to feed and fuel the world? That's a tall order, but it's doable. So how do what you do helps realize that potential? Because it's groups like this, it's not any special magic that makes sense. Groups like this that make things happen. You guys help make things happen, all right here, by us just talking about it and showing that there's a potential. Again, they were talking about it 10 years ago. There's a lot of, you can go Google all the things, articles that were written. It's still there, and they're discovering more.
Well, thanks for your example. Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you
Thanks for your service.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. I appreciate
Great.
it.
Thank you. Very nice.
Really appreciate it.
Fun.
I was going to ask for another round of applause, but that was quite a long round of applause. And I'm really appreciative. I'd be remiss if I didn't conclude by simply saying, General Richardson, we're incredibly grateful for the relationship that we have with Southcom. We're grateful for your service to nation, your service to Team Democracy. We want you to know that this is your home. And while Mr. Barwin said that you have a short time, you still have a year in the seat. And so there's a lot of time to still do some amazing work in the region together. And so I want to thank you for being here.
Get to work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Mr. Barwin, masterful moderating here. And again, I also want to thank you.
I didn't get half my questions. What are you talking about?
I heard some of them, and so I think we're good. No, I want to thank you for of course, the amazing commitment and partnership that FIU has with the Knight Foundation. Your support to our institution has been vital, not just for research, but for our student success. And so I want to thank you as well. I want to thank our partnership with the Council on Foreign Relations. This was a powerful event, largely because of the partnership that we have with you, our consulate corps, and our other constituencies here in South Florida. Of course, I also want to thank our students. We got a bunch of them here. Please do not bombard her with applications just yet. We'll put calls out. Oh, she's ready. Okay. Now I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank the broader community for certainly being here. And on that note, I want to invite all of you to a reception that we have downstairs, where we have small, light refreshments. Okay. And so again, thank you. Join me in a final round of applause. And this concludes our lunch.
Thank you.